See, what you do over and over and over and over and over again becomes your habit. Why it becomes your habit? Because that's what you program in your brain. What you're doing repeatedly, well, you're programming it. Those are input that's going in your brain. And if you don't know that by now, right, the things you do repeatedly are the things that eventually become your habits. That's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it makes it really much easier to develop new habits. You just have to figure out what it is you want and figure out how to do it repeatedly in the same way, repeatedly over time. And when you're able to do that, well, you're creating new pathways in the brain. All right, guys, Dr. Del Miller's here, and thanks again for joining me for another episode of The Best You've Ever Been. Hope you're doing wonderful out there. It is, the end of January, and I hope you guys are on track with those goals that you've set for yourself for this year, 2023. I don't believe in New Year's resolution. I believe in setting goals and working towards accomplishing those goals. So hopefully you've come up with a 90-day plan so that you can have some intermediary steps. Come up with some small wins in between that big goal that you've set for yourself for the year. So, we've been talking about creating your future self. And where do you start? You start at the end. With your goals, I always encourage my clients to start at the end, right? You start with, what is that future vision of yourself that you're creating? That is your future self. What is that future vision of yourself that you're creating? You're creating your future self, and we've talked about that. We've talked about doing a future self visualization, sitting down and really spending some time looking at, well, who are you becoming? And then when you figure out who you're becoming, what that picture of your future self is. Who is she? Who is he? If you have a certain look, what does she look like? What does your body look like? If you're trying to lose weight, well, how much does she weigh? That's important. It's important to go there. You need to have a clear vision. If you don't know what you want, how can you ask for it? How can you create it? You can't create what you don't know. You have to be able to see it clearly before you can know how to go about doing it. Before you can ask your subconscious for help, before you can program your subconscious and rewire your brain to help you go there, well, you have to know exactly what it is you want. You have to have a clear picture. So start there. I was talking with a client this morning, and, she had a trouble seeing what that weight is. And it was almost, she didn't want to put a number on it. I said, no, put a number on it. Where do you feel comfortable? Where is that person you are becoming, that future self you're creating? Where is she, right? So go there and look at, well, what does she look like physically? What do you look like physically? What does he look like physically? What are the characteristics? What are characteristics, mannerism, everything about your future self? You need to be able to paint a clear, vivid picture. Before you can create it, you create a clear, vivid picture, right? You wouldn't build a house without having a complete blueprint of everything about that house, right? You don't develop a blueprint after you start. You develop a blueprint, an architectural blueprint, before you break ground. So you know exactly everything about that house. You know exactly what the foundation should be. Same thing, when you come up with that vision of your future self, well, you know what the foundation should be. The foundation of your future self are the habits, mindset, and behaviors of your future self. Those are the foundation, right? The non-negotiable and guardrail habits of your future self. That's what you're going to be practicing in order to be successful, because you do what you're going to be doing the rest of your life, especially if you're trying to lose weight, right? You lose weight the way you're going to live the rest of your life. So you want to adopt the mindset, habits, and behaviors of your future self. And that's how you're going to rewire your brain and reprogram your subconscious. So today we're going to talk about, why is it necessary to rewire your brain? Oh, you see, your brain is always changing. Your brain is never static, right? Your brain isn't hardwired. Everything is in flux. Your brain is plastic, so to speak. That's why we call it reprogramming the brain. We call it neuroplasticity, right? Because your brain is always changing based on what you do, based on the input it gets. See, what you do over and over and over and over and over again becomes your habit. Why it becomes your habit? Because that's what you program in your brain. What you're doing repeatedly, well, you're programming it. Those are input that's going in your brain. And if you don't know that by now, right, the things you do repeatedly are the things that eventually become your habits. That's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it makes it really much easier to develop new habits. You just have to figure out what it is you want and figure out how to do it repeatedly in the same way, repeatedly over time. And when you're able to do that, well, you're creating new pathways in the brain, right? New synaptic pathways in the brain. And that's how you rewire the brain, through repetition and effort. So it's important because, let's face it, guys, 95% of our habits are things we're not aware of, right? They reside in the subconscious mind. You have the conscious mind, which is just the tip of the iceberg that you see above the water. The subconscious mind is beneath the surface. You can't really see it. You know it's there. You can become aware of what's in the subconscious mind when you get a jolt of realization. Oh, I just had a thought. Or, when you stop to think about something, when you bring it into consciousness, that's when you're aware of. You bring something from beneath the surface up to the top of the surface. Now you're aware of it. Your unconscious mind is deep, deep, deep down there. Those are the memories and everything that's ever happened to you in life. Everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever done is stored in your unconscious mind. It's deep down in there. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just don't have access to it. It may take hypnosis or, some other form of therapy to get deep into the unconscious. But what's important is, how do you rewire your brain? You can rewire your brain. You can retrain your subconscious to do what you want and to help you. In order to be successful, you're going to need to create some new habits, right? If you're trying to change your life, you're going to need to develop some new habits. You're going to need to change some old behavioral patterns that may no longer serve you. You're going to need to change your mindset, create a new mindset. Well, all that is, you go about doing that by rewiring your brain. You see, folks, here's something you need to understand. Habits are created in the brain. Every habit starts as just a thought in the brain. And your thoughts control your emotions, and your emotions control your action. It's a little cinema I call TEA, the thought, emotion, action paradox, right? Your thoughts create your emotions, and your emotions create your actions or behavior, the things that you do. And a lot of times people think about weight loss and they jump right to the action, right? I need to diet and exercise. Well, that resides in the level of action. But guess what? What you do is controlled by how you feel, your emotions. And your emotions are dictated by your thoughts, what you're thinking, your thought patterns. Therefore, well, doesn't it make sense to go to the level of thought in the brain in order to create or change habits? When I work with clients to change habits, we look at the behavior that they want to change, and we go back and look at the thought process, the thought pattern behind that behavior. Because if you're doing something, you're doing it because you're thinking a certain way, you're feeling a certain way, you're thinking certain thoughts. So that's the process, folks. Thought, emotion, action. So we rewire the brain so that we're able to create new habits and change old habits that no longer serve us. And the way we do that is, number one, to become conscious of what it is that you're trying to create. What habit are you working on creating? What habit are you working on changing? If there's a behavior pattern that no longer serves you, well, you have to become aware of it. And you have to focus on it. You have to become aware of it. You have to know exactly what it is and become aware of it, because that's the only place where you can have access to it, is to bring it to awareness. That's when you can change it. And as you become aware of it, you start to focus on that habit pattern that you want to either change or create. That focus is what's going to create new synaptic connections, new brain connections, right? A habit is just a neurological pathway in the brain. And just by thinking about what it is you want to do, by focusing on the habit that you want to create, by putting some effort behind it, you're creating new brain connections. You're rewiring your brain, folks. You're creating a new neural pathway. That is how simple it is. Not easy, because in order for it to take hold, it requires repetition. It requires that you do it regularly. Every day you're practicing that new habit of yours or that new behavior pattern, right? You're doing it every day until it becomes effortless. And once it becomes effortless, that's where it now resides in the level of the subconscious. Because you don't have to think about it anymore. You do have to continue to practice it, right? You do have to continue to make a determined effort until it becomes just a natural part of your lifestyle, until it becomes what you do naturally. So it's a process. It's not an easy process. It takes effort, it takes work, and it takes you knowing exactly what it is you want. So the process of rewiring your brain, again, is the process of becoming conscious and getting clear about exactly what it is you want. So what it is that you're creating, we start there. What is that future self that you're creating? Now, what are I call them non-negotiable habits of your future self? If you can come up with a few keystone habits are habits that affect a lot of different areas of your life. For example, if you're not exercising, you decide to start exercising, well, that affects a lot of areas of your life, because number one, you probably end up feeling better. You probably end up sleeping better. You probably end up want to eat better. You probably end up want to drink more water. So you see, you're affecting a lot of different areas of your life. So we call those keystone habits. Right? They're some of the most important habits that you can adopt. So if you figure out a few keystone habits that you want to create, that is going to affect a lot of different areas of your life. And just focus on one at a time. What is this one habit that I can focus on that is helping me move towards that future self I'm creating? What are one of those keystone habits of my future self? Right? And you get very clear about it and you start practicing it today. Just start practicing it today. It's very small, something very small, but you practice it today. And every day you focus on it. Every day you're making sure that you're doing that. And if you're doing something about it every single day, repetition, over time, you keep doing that, it becomes easier and easier, because your brain starts to make new synaptic connection. Your brain starts to create a neural pathway. Do you see how this works? You are rewiring your brain. But it takes focus, it takes effort, and it takes consistency over time. Success is nothing more than consistency over time, because that's what it takes in order to create new pathway in your brain that last. Okay, guys? So when we talk about rewiring your brain, you need to understand that your brain is plastic. Your brain is permeable, right? It's always changing based on the input it's getting. So whether you're conscious of that input or not, it's getting input. And that's why a lot of things we're not aware of, a lot of things that a lot of our behaviors we're not aware of, because a lot of the things we do just reside in the subconscious. There are things that we're used to doing, so we don't have to think about it anymore. They're old habit patterns that your subconscious just keep feeding you what you have fed it over all these years. What has become easy, what has become comfortable, what has become natural. That is what resides in the subconscious. What's easy, what's comfortable, what's natural. So obviously it's easy for your brain to regurgitate that back to you. It's easy, it's comfortable, it's natural. Your brain doesn't want to deal with easy, comfortable, and natural, so it pushes those down to the subconscious, where the program just keeps running over and over again. Your brain loves new things. When you start to practice a new habit and you start to focus, you start to learn a new skill, you start to learn something new, your brain is going to make all kinds of synaptic connections because it loves that. Right? So you're going to bring together, you have a lot of brain activity when you start something new. And if you're able to maintain that over time, then that will eventually become the habit that you are establishing. The new habit that you're establishing, or the old habit that you are reprogramming in your brain. To reprogram an old habit, you have to go back and be aware of that habit and be aware of the change you want to make at the point where you want to make that change. Let's say you have this habit of just reacting negatively to feedback. Well, if you want to change that pattern of reacting negatively to the feedback, well, you learn to become aware of it. When you start getting feedback, then you learn to stop before you start reacting. And you stop when you start reacting, before you start reacting, so that you say the automatic pattern is what your lower brain is sending to you. Your lower brain is always in a fight with your higher brain, right? The lower brain is what's automatic. It's what gets you to fight or flight, right? It's automatic. It's impulse. It's an impulse. And it's going to give you that impulse based on what's programmed in there. So now when you learn to stop and pause for a minute, that gives your higher brain a chance to take over. Your higher brain is what's responsible for making executive decisions. For saying, hey, wait a minute. No. That's not in your interest. That's not how you want to do that. You don't really want to do that. Right? But in order for your higher brain to take over, you're going to need to put some space between the emotion and the action. Very important lesson to learn. So in doing that, you start to reprogram your brain, and you give your higher brain a chance to take over from your lower brain. You see how that works, folks? Yes, this is a very interesting process, very complicated process, but it's also a process that if you're going to be successful in whatever goals you've set for yourself for the year, then you need to focus. We'll be talking a lot more as we go along about rewiring the brain and why it's important to prioritize the habits and the mindset of your future self as opposed to the habits and mindset of your current self, right? We'll be talking about that because it's important, and that's how you're going to get the results that you're looking for and make them last. You're going to make them last because you're practicing the habits and mindset of your future self. So instead of becoming like your future self, eventually you'll start to be your future self. You see how that works? If you're practicing the habits of your future self and the mindset of your future self, you will start to be your future self, not just become your future self. At some point, you will be. You're being your future self because you're thinking like your future self, you're acting like your future self, you're behaving like your future self. That's how you get there, and that's how you create results that last. If you're trying to lose weight, well, you don't ever do anything to lose weight that you're not willing to do for the rest of your life. That's why you practice the mindset, habits, and behaviors of your future self. So what you're doing now is what you're going to be doing a year from now, 10 years from now. That's your future self. You're practicing the mindset, habits, and behaviors of your future self. Okay? All right, I'm going to leave it there, but these are the kind of things that we do in my coaching programs, like Weight Loss Made Easy. If weight is an issue for you, Weight Loss Made Easy is a group coaching program, and do have private sessions with me as well. So these are the kind of things we go through, and I tell you, this is where people get results. And I was just on a coaching call this morning with a bunch of clients whom have gotten incredible results. And not just weight loss, but they will tell you that some of the biggest results they have gotten is in their view of themselves, their internal relationship with themselves, how they're able to now work with their mind and do what I call the self-counseling. We use a journaling process to do self-counseling. And they're able to do that. And now they're able to recognize their stinking thinking, recognize that their thoughts are what's leading them down this path of emotional sabotage. So we do a lot of work with dealing with emotional sabotage and looking at the thought patterns behind that, right? So again, Weight Loss Made Easy, if weight is an issue, then that's something to consider. The Best You Academy is a program I will be talking about soon, because we'll be talking about, again, how to rewire your brain. That's one of the programs I'm working on, so you'll hear more about that coming up. All right, my friends, that's all I've got for you today, but as usual, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the resources that I have for you. Okay? Talk next time. Please leave me a review and a rating if you don't mind, and share one of these episodes with someone you know and love, or whoever you think it can benefit from. Whichever episode that you like and you think they can benefit from, just grab the link and send it to them. Say, hey, I think this would be interesting for you. Take a listen. All right? Talk soon. Bye.